It's sort of a little odd for us to be that nostalgic about it, but I'm looking forward to this concert. So coming to the stage now, we have two people who have been extraordinarily influential across everything happening in digital marketing for a long time, and in different ways. Guy Kawasaki first came to our notice as the head of the evangelist for Apple. He is author of multitudinous books. Enchantment is the most recent, although actually he has one on Google+, which I have not yet read, but I've read many of the others, and they're always hugely provocative and informing, and also fun. He's also the presence, the gray eminence behind Alltop, which is attempting to slice things onto the top layer of everything that you really want on the web. Robert Scoble is the startup liaison for Rackspace. He's also one of our most formidable bloggers and video bloggers, and first came to our notice when he was one of the very first people to be blogging from within a big organization when he was at Microsoft. And so these are two guys who, they're very current, they're very busy, and yet they also have a longitudinal perspective on the industry, which I think we'll all find fascinating. They're here in conversation with each other today on advertising in the social sphere, deciphering ways to create connections, engagement, and presence. Let's give a big hand for Guy Kawasaki and Robert Scoble. Come on out. All right, take it away.
What's up, Guy?
So, Robert, thank you very much for having us here.
Yeah.
AdTech is one of my favorite conferences because it's all marketing people, and I love marketing people, so it's a target-rich environment. So, you want to be the guest or you want to be the host?
We can switch roles. People in the audience, we'd love to get you involved, too.
All right. So, what should we talk about first? How about our favorite topic, Google+?
What about it?
I don't know.
Is anybody there?
Well, yeah, right. I am. That's two of us. So what's your current opinion of what's going on there, how it's going?
I think Google is in a deep hole with comparison to Facebook. And you can see that hole in a bunch of different areas. For instance, app developers. They keep telling me...
That's an oxymoron, Google+.
Well,
yeah.
Google Plus doesn't have a right API yet. So where Facebook has this Open Graph API where apps like Runkeeper, when you go running, can report into Facebook that you're running. And Google doesn't have anything like this. It doesn't have a way for Spotify to share the music with your friends and so on and so forth. That leads to a whole range of things that is keeping Google at bay, right? We're using this app called Highlight at South by Southwest.
How many of you are using Highlight?
Probably like 5 people, right? Because I already stopped you guys. For those who don't know what Highlight is, it's this app that uses Facebook, so it requires Facebook, and it shows people who are also on Highlight and who are within 100 yards of us. So there's, all 15 of you on my phone right now. This is pretty cool. This is informing about where the puck is going. To me, it's a predictor of what kinds of apps we're going to see in the future, thanks to mobile, thanks to tablets, thanks to the systems that Facebook has built, right? Highlight can't build on top of Google+. There's no right API to do this, and there's not enough people in the world who are on Google+ who have added all their likes. I've added 1,000 likes on Facebook, right? Google doesn't know that about me. It knows other things about me, but it doesn't know my likes. It doesn't have a good friend graph, right? My wife's family who grew up in Iran, and all of her elementary school children from the 1970s are all on Facebook. They're not on Google+. And until that happens, this comparison of Google+ to Facebook is going to be just like this. People are going to go, it's a ghost town, or it's not up to date, it's not there. Facebook is still the disruptor against Google, and so on and so forth.
Well, don't look at me like I'm going to defend Google+. Last time I checked, that didn't work for Google. But I have to tell you that I still am very enamored with it. I like the aesthetics. I especially love the fact that I can edit. Because I edit almost every post and every comment. And so what I do now is I post first to Google+, I read it, I like it, and then I copy it and paste it to Facebook.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of an awkward procedure.
We have Google+ running here.
Yeah. But what do you think? Okay, so someday there will be an API, right?
I don't want to be all negative on Google+. The conversations I have there are really better than Facebook for some reason. Maybe because all the conversationalists have self-selected and gone to Google+, and we've found a place because it's new and it's more public. It has an affordance of being public in a way that Facebook really didn't. Facebook started with just friends and family,
right.
and people are struggling to understand that Facebook can be public now. Maybe because of that, I'm getting conversations that are interesting. And if Google continues going down the collaborative route, I think it'll be very powerful. The video hangouts, where I work at Rackspace, we use it to communicate between our two offices because we have dev teams that are decentralized, right? And you can have 8 people chatting back and forth on video. That's something you can't do with Skype, and it's something you can't do with Facebook yet. And if Google keeps rolling out features like that, I think they'll be just fine. And if they continue putting my content into their search engine, I think they'll be just fine too. Which is, for this audience, is why you should still be investing in
So
Google+.
that's a very good question. So, having heard your issues with Google+ in terms of the lack of API and 900 million people less, what should these marketing people do? Should they just take a wait-and-see attitude? Should they get their fan page going? I mean, what's the advice for them?
I would build a brand that goes across all the social networks. I wouldn't just invest in Twitter. I wouldn't just invest in Facebook. I wouldn't just invest in Google+. What I'm doing, if you watch my Google+, it links over to my Facebook, and my Facebook links over to Twitter, and my Twitter, and I bounce my audience back around all 3, which makes that audience have much deeper resonance. And
You hope.
No, it does. And by the way, that continues a weather pattern that brings startups to me and other things.
So something I wonder about you is that
I have more followers on Pinterest than you do.
yeah, well, that's a temporary. How many of you are on Pinterest? How many of you are on Pinterest? Will you all follow me and not him so I can catch up? Because it really affects my ego and my whole sense of well-being that Robert has twice as many followers on Pinterest as I do. So you think they should have multiple presences in all 3. And yet, they're sort of resource and time constrained. So how would you stack rank them? Twitter, Facebook, and Google+ today?
It depends on who you are. I mean, if
Let's say you're Virgin America.
If you're a wedding dress manufacturer,
Okay.
Pinterest is where you should be building relationships with the influencers who are hanging
What if
out
you're
there.
Virgin America?
Facebook, but Twitter, Facebook. Facebook is driving more traffic to these brands. I talked to GoPro last night, and I talked to lots of brands. And does that match? This audience knows who would say put most of your effort on Facebook? Twitter? Do nothing?
Super Bowl commercials.
YouTube? Yeah, this is interesting.
So it's
We're having trouble getting engagement here.
Yeah. If the 2 of us can't do it, we might as well go home. Man. Wow. So most of you recommend Facebook as a marketing platform over Twitter and Google+? Yeah? That's fair.
For you?
Well, let's say for big brand, Facebook. What about, to take the opposite extreme, what about this wedding dress designer? Then what? Pinterest, yeah? What about a restaurant? What about, a street food vendor who wants to say that my truck will be at the corner of
Twitter and Yelp, and food spotting. My brother owns a bar. I'm getting him to support these newer things where foodies are hanging out looking for food.
So, I mean, it seems like it's a very confusing time for everyone, right? I mean, what do you do anymore? Not that I've done this scientifically or with any kind of feedback mechanism or anything. I focus everything, almost all my effort on Google+. It may not be right, but it's just
I did for a while
falling
because
in love.
Well, I did for a while because I knew that whenever something is new, that's when the social graphs, the graphs get built, the linking behaviors all get built, and the perception gets built.
Okay.
And now I'm still there every day, every morning and every evening, but I'm putting less effort into that and spreading out my effort back into Pinterest. This is probably why I'm taking your ass on Pinterest.
Speaking of effort, Robert, so like I look at Building 43 and I look at Scovalizer,
Yep.
there's not a lot of action there anymore. So where's blogging in your mind these days?
I've focused on the social network because I see that's where the traffic was coming from anyways, and I don't have to deal with the brand that a media brand has to deal with. A media brand has to get you to leave Facebook so that they can monetize you, so they can show you ads, the stuff that you guys do.
Right.
I don't have to worry about that. And so I've decided to live inside the Death Stars. I call these things the Death Stars or ecosystems, right? And by doing that, you can build a very sizable audience very quickly. I mean, on Google Plus, I have more than 1 million followers. You have more than 1 million followers there. On Facebook, in just the last 4 months, I've gone from 13,000 followers to 175,000 followers.
This is when you cut over to subscribers, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you consolidated your fan pages into one
I
profile.
did, because I don't have to worry about
Right.
building a brand page that's a brand. I'm Robert Scoble everywhere, so I don't have to worry about that.
I had the same situation where I had a personal profile and 2 fan pages, and I just could not maintain it. It's just too hard to be in 3 places, plus Google Plus, plus Twitter, and now Pinterest. So it was killing me.
Let's talk about the brands that are doing it right. Talk about GoPro. How many people have watched a GoPro video in the last month or so? Some of their videos have been watched, 20 million times. Why does that work? Why does the Red Bull, the guy who runs Red Bull is here, by the way. I saw him on the highlight.
Yeah.
Why does that work? They have 500 people building media that causes conversations, that causes ideas to happen about their brand. And why does that work?
Well, my theory is that all of social media, it comes down to, is your product or service good? And at the point
But Red Bull is arguable, right? It's sugar water with caffeine.
But there's better sugar water than other sugar water. I mean,
If I took you back 10 years and took you in a time machine and took you back before Red Bull had built that brand, you would have spit it out. You would have said, man, give me my Diet Coke back. This stuff tastes like crap, right?
Where's the Red Bull
I
guy?
did this, right? Yeah, let's get the Red Bull guy up here. But now we think it's a must-have. How did he do that? He did that by attaching his brand to people who jump out of planes and surf 60-foot waves and do extreme. There's a case of Red Bull in the TechCrunch office. Why are they doing that? They're attaching their brand to other bleeding edge, early adopter, innovative brands and people.
Well, why is it in TechCrunch then? No, just kidding.
You don't have one in your house? I mean,
Red Bull?
I bet they'll deliver one to your house.
I have to tell you a funny story. The other night, my 6-year-old downed a can of a similar drink, and wow, did we pay the price. I mean, like my older son said, oh yeah, go, try this. And it's like pure caffeine. And he was up all night. It was an ugly situation. But I would make the case that with GoPro, it is a very cool camera. So contrast, what's the difference between GoPro and Contour then?
Their competitor Contour actually is easier to use and has
right. So why is one taking off? And
because of this brand that they built, and they hired, by the way, one of the first 8 employees from Red Bull. So they said, oh, the Red Bull sold sugar water using this new thing. We can use that to sell $200, $300 cameras.
They should hire John Scully because he made he has a history of selling sugar water. And he went to Apple. So
now GoPro has 10 guys down here who go around the world and do media. Next week they're going to be up in Alaska shooting school teachers who are going to let weather balloons up in the air, and they're going to put $300 GoPro cameras on those things and make media about this. The media causes us to talk. And on Google Plus now, I have something new in the morning to put on my Google Plus page and on Facebook and on YouTube. I can like it on YouTube, right? I can Twitter about it, tweet about it.
Where do you think GoPro would be today if social media didn't exist?
Well, they would be forced to buy Super Bowl ads.
Right. And
they'd still do. They actually, Nick, the guy who runs GoPro, said, we bought ad space on Oprah. So they went straight for the market.
Oprah?
Oprah. I kept seeing their ads on Oprah, and he said, Yes.
You watch
because
Oprah?
I do.
Why?
She's number one.
So what?
I want to study innovators. Why? How did they get to be number one?
God, I learned something. I hope you all tweeted that out, that Robert Scovel is an Oprah fan.
Actually, when I was on Fox News, I met Winona backstage.
Yeah.
And I said, I saw you on Oprah. And she said the same thing. She said, you watch Oprah? and I said, only when you're on. And that made lifelong friendship there.
Your whole metrosexualness is coming out there, Scovel. I mean,
it's San Francisco, baby. So they bought Oprah TV commercials because they wanted to demonstrate that this $300 camera could stand up on a big screen TV. And they bought other spots on other shows as well. But they would have done just fine, I think, but they would have had to work and pay a lot more to get where they are. This social media is the free advertising. This is why your book is so interesting, right? Because companies that create remarkable products get talked about. How did Instagram, Instagram started down here on the pier with 2 kids at a picnic table that cost $500 a month?
that's where Occupy SF is now.
Pretty much now. It's 2 kids, right? How did they get to 30 million users without doing any advertising? They built something that caused conversations in the social media space,
Okay.
and they took off.
So you think one of the key marketing messages today is to cause conversations in social media?
Cause conversations, period.
Period.
I mean, Apple, I was sitting behind 2 people on the plane one year when the iPod first came out with that white headphones. Why did Steve Jobs do white headphones? Why not red ones or black ones? Black ones actually look better because they don't look so glaring.
Yeah.
But white ones cause conversations. I saw this happen.
Well,
somebody said, "What the hell are those white headphones? I've never seen white headphones before."
The question for that is,
and then the device came out, and that started that conversation.
if we could truly go back in history and find out if white earbuds was on purpose or not. I mean, I understand looking back, it's definitely a principle of social proof. The more white earbuds you saw, the more likely you were buying an iPod. The more likely you bought an iPod, you added to the pool of white earbuds. So it became this wonderful upward spiral. But, was it on purpose? It doesn't matter. I guess it doesn't matter how you succeed, if you succeed, right?
I'd say if a product causes conversations, positive conversations, not negative ones, because I have lots of companies that I bitch about all the time on Twitter and don't get served well and don't build a product that's nice. But positive conversations cause free advertising.
So maybe,
and by the way, when you get free advertising, when you do paid advertising, it works better.
Yeah. So other than the duhism that you should cause conversations, could you give your theories about what are the qualities of a product or service that in fact do cause conversations?
It's hard to tell. It's something emotional so I go around the world and I study startups, right? I was user 77 on Instagram. I think it's past 30 million today. I saw Flipboard before anybody else did, and I immediately had an emotional response to it. I said, that is cool. I want that. And I don't know how to describe it. You describe it in your book, but
So for you, it's like pornography. You just know it when you see it?
That's it. When you have a great meal, you go to Guy Savoy in Paris and you have a great meal. There's a bit of social proof going on there. Everybody's telling you you're going to have the best meal of your life, and then you do. But how do I decide? How do I describe how to make the best meal you've ever had? I can't describe it.
For this session to be of any use to the audience, and we have to give them more than create stuff that people talk about. I mean, we got to give them something more actionable than that, because nobody's out there saying, "Oh, I was going to create this piece of shit that nobody's going to talk about." I mean, so what do they do? I mean, they're wondering.
If you're creating a product, there's a few ways to get PR and get people to try it.
Okay.
One, you got to be there at the market window when the window is open. Instagram would have happened within a 4-month period.
Why?
Because that's when iPhone was taking off. That's when the camera quality was taking off and getting much better. That's when the social graphs were taking off, and we were building our social graphs out and understanding what Facebook was really all about.
So you don't
believe... This is where we wanted to share something with our Facebook and our Twitter friends.
You don't believe that products like Instagram create their own windows?
No, I think they fit into the windows that are there. The good entrepreneurs know how to hit those windows perfectly. Flipboard would have only happened that summer. If it happened a year later, it wouldn't have taken off. It just would, somebody else would have satisfied the demand. There was 4 competitors to Flipboard and still are pretty good ones, like Pulse and Zeit and some other services. Zeit got bought by CNN, right? So, and they all came out within the same time period. GoWalla and Foursquare came out at the same time period. Foursquare just had a better philosophy. I couldn't check in at Buy Right ice cream store down the street, right, with GoWalla, because he made a choice that he thought the game was more important than the check-in, than the data you're going to learn about when you check in, you know. And Dennis at Foursquare understood that it wasn't the game; it was the data that you were going to get when you checked in that was going to keep you using the app and make it useful, right? Okay. So these market windows open up because new devices, new ideas, new things happen in our society. You know, Apple's Macintosh opened up desktop publishing, right? And there was PageMaker and a bunch of others. PageMaker's the one we remember because it won. Well, but there were other guys who tried to make that happen, right?
But just so you know, because I was there.
I know you were there.
Desktop publishing was a gift from God to Apple. It's not like Apple said, oh, let's create a Macintosh because we have this vision of people wanting to do their own publishing. We wanted to make it a spreadsheet, database, and word processing machine, and basically we were 0 for 3. And if you ever want proof that there is a God, it's Apple Computer, because that's the only explanation for Apple's continued survival than the existence of a benevolent God.
Well, what got Steve? What got Steve to ship a $5,000 printer? Because that's really what caused that market window to open up.
Well, it was $7,000, but it was Steve's. I think my interpretation is Steve just could not stand the fact that he created a computer which integrated text and graphics tied to a letter quality daisy wheel printer. That just was such oxymoron for him that he had to, and he started out with a dot matrix printer, but that wasn't good enough for Steve. And so, where else do you go? Xerox PARC? Figure out what they're doing, and you democratize it. That's a good path.
How did he convince everybody to do that? Because that's the tough thing for innovators.
How did he convince internal people?
Yeah. $7,000 printer, man. Give me a break. Who's going to buy that?
I hope you don't think that Steve had to convince anybody of anything.
Back in the 80s, he was not Steve Jobs.
He was still Steve Jobs.
Yeah, but he wasn't, the Steve Jobs of today.
Believe me, he was. That's not a democracy. He didn't have offsites with employees and ask them how they felt. Let's just say, okay. He never asked me how I felt. I wouldn't have told him anyway. But no, I think you have to attribute Apple to his just sort of single-mindedness, focus on whatever he wanted, and he was just right.
So he was right, and he opened up this market window that Aldous PageMaker jumped into.
No. Oh, okay. In a sense, he was right about creating the hardware, the Macintosh experience. But Aldous PageMaker opened up a market called desktop publishing for Apple.
But if it wasn't for that laser printer, I would never have bought a Macintosh.
That's true.
And because I was in the journalism world back then, I would never have bought a Macintosh. I would never have switched my allegiances from DOS to a Mac, the Mac world. And our school wouldn't have invested the money to buy them for the journalism department, right?
Yep.
So PageMaker took advantage of this market window that opened up. This is what entrepreneurs do so well. They see something happen. If you talk to Paul Davison, the guy who created Highlight, you talk to him and he goes, yeah, this is a market window that's opening up right now. This is why there's 7 competitors to Highlight. There's Sonar, there's Glancy and Banjo and on. There's a bunch of them. Why? Because a lot of us now have iPhones or Android devices that have GPS, that have cameras, that have ability, always on wire Wi-Fi. Remember when Twitter first got hot at South by Southwest? AT&T didn't stay up, right? Now AT&T stays up. And that opened up opportunities for guys like this who come along and say, I could do something with this Facebook thing that didn't exist 6 years ago. I can do something with this GPS that we didn't have these 6 years ago. And
So-
now there's a market window that's opened up. Now in 2 years, that's going to seem commonplace, and if somebody wants to build a highlight, they're not going to be able to.
too late.
It's too late.
Right. So for this audience, from their perspective, what do they do? What do they do when they see 5 different location-based services, 5 more, Groupon clones, and they're running these large brands, and they're trying to figure out,
Well,
where do I place?
the head of Al Jazeera, I had breakfast with him through Highlight. He's on it.
Yeah,
The head of Red Bull, he's on it.
yeah, and
The head of Adidas,
right,
he's on it.
Yeah, but
I've collected
how are they
2,200
supposed to know this?
by coming here.
To this
This is
to
why.
this session?
This is why you pay $5,000 to come to AdTech and hear some new ideas.
Is that right?
I hope so, because that's why I'm here. I'm going to go out and hang out with all you guys and ask what's new in your industry, and that's why I'm here, to learn new things and see where the puck is going. Because the Google guys, I was standing with a friend of mine at CES, and Sergey Brin walked up.
Yeah.
And he was wearing a helmet with a camera and with a LED display in it.
Yeah,
And he was looking very dorky.
yeah, and
Sergey Brin came up and started asking 50 questions about that. Google's working on wearable glasses. The Israeli companies, Face.com, they have face detection. You aim it at your face, and it tells me I'm looking at Guy Kawasaki. Highlight is informing me about a new app that shows me who's around me and soon what's around me, right? What's cool right now, what's buzzing, where's the cool party tonight? We're already able to sense that from Foursquare, right?
but it's not.
So you take that to where the puck is going 2 years from now.
Robert, I understand.
We're going to have these Google glasses.
Nail you
and I'm
down,
gonna-
Robert. I mean, arguably, these people paid $5,000 to come to this conference, not to hear that you should go where the puck was going, because prior to coming to this conference, they were going to the where the puck was. So like my
My
we
dad
gotta
is
help
still
them more
struggling.
tactically. We have to help
These
them.
are innovators, so they want to know where it's going. My dad is still struggling with how Facebook works, right? This audience, I hope, knows what a social graph is and knows what open graph is and knows how things
Okay.
get.
I'm going to push you in
messages
another direction because it's impossible to get you in this one. From the outside looking in, viewing the efforts of larger brands
Yep.
in social media, what do you think they're doing wrong?
Not responding to what's being said about them. We bitch about United Airlines every single day on Twitter, and do they respond? Do they shift their company to listen to that feedback? Not really.
And so you mean
We still don't have Wi-Fi in any of the planes that I fly on, right?
Well,
we
New York and San Francisco has.
We still have, yeah, because they were forced to by the innovator, Virgin American.
Yeah.
And they were getting their ass kicked on the really profitable route from New York to San Francisco, and so they were forced to there. On the non-profitable routes out of San Francisco, they are not forced to, and they have crappy planes with crappy seats and no Wi-Fi. At least put Wi-Fi in
Anybody
there.
here from United while we're... I bet you won't raise your hand now, though.
Yeah. Not learning from the Red Bulls and the GoPros of how to create conversations about your product and your brand. The world is now a YouTube world. Are companies creating enough media that people want to engage with? And are they figuring that out? Not many companies are. I mean, at Microsoft, I got to 4 million views a month using a $200 camera and just going around the campus and interviewing people. How many companies are even doing that? And that was 7 years ago.
Let's ask.
How many companies are doing that? And how many companies take a little camera around and interview the cool people at your work? A couple.
How many of you produce
Fewer
video at
hands
all?
than are on Highlight, by the way. That's
many-
yeah.
And what kind of video do you produce?
Stuff that interests me from my iPhone.
Yep.
No, for your company. How many of you have companies that produce
Yeah.
video?
Stuff from your iPhone that interests you. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We have the ability to do live video from here. How many people are doing that? We have a TV studio here. This is shit we had to pay millions of dollars
Yeah,
before,
a few years ago.
10 years ago. I mean, I worked at TV stations, back in the 80s. And this stuff is magic. Anyways.
Well, to answer my own question, from the outside looking in, I adore something like Virgin America, where if you look at their Twitter stream, it's not simply about Virgin America.
Yep.
I mean, they provide tech support, they provide information about destinations that have nothing to do with the airline per se, and they also provide information and promotions for Virgin America. I think it's a very nice mix. And so I subscribe to what I call the NPR model. And the NPR model works like this. So 365 days a year, NPR puts out great content. And so they provide such great content that I think they've earned the right to run the telethons. I can't tell you I enjoy the telethons, but in my mind, I want to support them because they have done such great content. And I think that's a very good model for most brands. If you're producing great content, then people won't mind if you then promote to them every once in a while. And so that's sort of my mental framework for my social media activities also, because I post a lot of content, but I figure 5% of my content is truly promoting my book, my brand, my whatever, that has financial return. But I keep in mind, it has to be roughly 20-1.
I mean, I'm listening. I'm listening to anybody who tweets the word ad tech right now. So if you want to say we're screwing up on stage or should talk about something else, or if you're scared of asking a question, you can do this, right? This is how companies work. I visited Dell a couple weeks ago, and they have a whole room where they have huge monitors, and they're studying everything that's being said about them and their competitors, and they respond to it. They've totally changed how people think of Dell in the social media.
Okay, so let's explore the opposite question, or the opposite example, which is Apple. Apple is the anti-social company, right? It's closed, it's opaque, it doesn't engage other than in the Apple Store. Apple Store, I'd say, is as great as it gets. But digitally, socially, social media, Apple's zero.
There's one Apple in the world. Most of us aren't Apple.
Granted, but...
And Apple has this band of evangelists that you help build that answer all the questions.
But imagine if one day Apple...
They're very adept at dealing with that band of evangelists, by the way. MG Siegler or Gruber, they get invited to meet with Apple.
Yeah.
I'm sure if MG has a problem with a Mac or a customer has a problem and he's hearing about it, he gets a backdoor.
To Apple's defense, I think any customer who has a problem with a Mac gets treated well. But still, imagine if Apple ever decided to embrace social media, how powerful it would be.
They tried with Ping, and so they stuck their toe in the water.
But I don't mean offering a social media service. Okay. I mean to actively participate, to engage.
It would screw up their model, though.
Why?
Their model is the brand speaks for the brand, and it's similar to Target. If you go and talk to Target, the brand speaks for the brand, the employees don't speak for the brand. And that's a tough one to change midstream, and it works for them. It works for Target, too. The CEO at Target very rarely gives interviews and very rarely is seen on stage at conferences talking about the brand. They want your experience to be the brand. I mean, John Fry at Fry's Electronics told me the same thing. The reason he doesn't want you to take pictures in the stores, because they have a no camera policy, is so that you discover the store by a friend dragging you in there, right? That's a very powerful way to discover something, and it creates much higher loyalty and much better brand resonance, brand
so you're saying
engagement, I guess.
That Apple is not something to learn from in social media?
I would learn from it and choose your own path. Use what gifts God has given you. Don't try to be an Apple or a Microsoft, because you'll fail at it both, because they have things that you don't have, right? When I did Channel 9 at Microsoft, I had 70,000 employees who were doing cool stuff to go around and study with my little camera. I interviewed 600 employees, everyone from the janitor to Bill Gates, right? That doesn't happen at a lot of companies. At Red Bull, there's not a lot of cool technology there. Once you see how the line runs, that's it. There's one video there. So you have to go and come up with a new plan for your own company that causes conversations to happen about your company. You got to use what God gives you, not what Apple has or not what Microsoft has or Google or Facebook.
So I guess the takeaway is trust in God.
And I'm an atheist, so there you go. God being fate.
So you want to take some questions from the audience now?
I'm taking them here on Twitter.
Okay, so you can step
Yeah,
up to
let's
the
look.
mic. We'll take questions from the audience.
Somebody said this is the best discussion you've heard in years. You don't get out much, do you?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, Guy. It's Colleen Shell. How
Hi.
are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you,
Good to see
Colleen?
you again. I am wondering, a lot of the stuff that you guys are talking about, of course, has been talked about a lot through the years in customer engagement and how you actually create customer engagement. And we talk about the brands, Red Bull and, GoPro and, of course, Apple. And it's like the same brands are talked over and over again. And if you look at those brands, those are some sexy brands. They're doing sexy things. They can talk about sports drinks and, beautiful photography. But I'm just wondering, what is actually getting in the way from brands taking this customer engagement to an innovative level and really playing with their brand, playing with their customers, and creating those videos, creating the conversations that make an impact? And a lot of people, just one more point, a lot of people point to these outside circumstances, like, oh, we don't have the budget, or my boss won't tell me, let me do it. But is there something that we're doing ourselves that are getting in our own way for us succeeding in customer engagement?
You just nailed it. The fear of trying to do something new. In big companies, at Microsoft, we were lucky. The first day, the PR team tried to shut us down, but we were lucky because we had 100,000 views that first day, and we were in the New York Times, and so they couldn't shut us down. But they did have this reaction. What the hell is going on here? Somebody's going around Microsoft with a $200 camera, taking 30-minute videos and putting them up, without checking with PR and doing. We broke a lot of. That was just one of the rules. This site, Channel 9, if you go to it, broke a lot of rules seven years ago. It didn't have a Microsoft logo on it. It put customers on the homepage, and the customers could say Microsoft sucks right on the top of the homepage, live. This broke all sorts of rules. We explicitly chose a color that the Microsoft branding police didn't like. We were poking a lot of things.
Did you get fired from Microsoft eventually?
No, you know what? They tried to hire me back this week again.
Really?
It's funny,
What was the sign?
Because they're in trouble. They have 2% market share for their mobile phone because developers aren't supporting their mobile phone.
It's that high? Never mind. So, Khalid, to answer your question, I would say that it's a more succinct way of describing what Robert said, which is, I think people ask permission too much.
Yeah.
They should just do. It's easy for Robert and I to say that, but I think that, if...
But beware of the culture at each company.
Yeah.
The work I was doing at Microsoft was shoving on this, I call it a corporate membrane. Some people say there's a line in the sand. There's not a line, it's a membrane. And at some companies, it stretches a long way, and it snaps back like this. At Google, a guy left Microsoft and went there and was blogging the same way I was, and he got fired in 2 weeks. He didn't understand at Google, they were just about to go IPO and everybody was about to get rich. And he started shoving on this membrane, and it was very taut. So you have to be a really good listener to the internal politics and understand who you're going to piss off. When you got to play chess, inside a big company. That said, try to do something. Here's something that big companies never do. Try to do something that pleases 4 people.
4 people?
Just 4 people.
Any 4 people?
Any 4 people. Try to do something that pleases 4 people. Because if you figure that out, then make it 8, then make it 16. If you double a penny every day for a month, you end up with $5.5 million at the end of the month.
You're so deep.
But this is how blogging built. This is how Twitter built, right? It took Twitter 6 months to get 13,000 users. Today we expect that in the first day or a couple hours.
Right.
But it took Twitter 6 months to get to 13,000 users, and I was like 13,500, so I wasn't even that early, right? I came in 6 months after it was out. And I started pitching it, then, and people would tell me it's the lamest thing they've ever seen. And they're doing that with Highlight, by the way. People are giving me hell about Highlight. They're going, what the hell are you talking about Highlight? It seems like a niche, Sabrina says. At how many users does it really become relevant?
Okay, next question.
No, this is a great question. This is why innovation doesn't happen in big companies.
Why?
Because they can't get small things.
Oh.
they can't get why you would do something to please only 4 people.
Okay?
The numbers aren't there. Steven Sinofsky wrote me an email this long one time with the words business value 13 times. He was running a $4 billion a year business, and I was telling him to go buy Flickr and go buy you. I told him to buy Skype before eBay did for $2 billion. They eventually did buy it, but it cost $8 billion, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay?
Hello.
Yeah.
This is Edgardo Flores. I'm from Honduras. I have a question for you. It seems that one of the biggest challenges today is keeping up to date with technology for people who work in digital content. So how do you balance your time between keynotes, traveling, family, business, and hockey?
Balance?
Yeah.
And also, would you sign my book at the end? My enchanted book?
Balance?
Hold it up, yeah.
Let me show you my family. You can't really see this, but it's my 2 kids reading iPads on Sunday morning, and of course I'm reading my iPad. That's family balance in my family.
So, the secret to my success in life is that I'm willing to grind it out. I don't consider myself particularly smart or visionary or insightful or everything. I'm just willing to grind it out. So I just work hard. That's what I do. I don't, and I love to write. I get great peace of mind writing. You may not believe this, but I am very introverted. This public role you see is thrust upon me. I think that actually explains why I like social media so much, is because I can pick my interactions at the time and place and method that I want. I also, physically, I have something called Meniere's disease, and there's 3 symptoms of Meniere's disease, which is, this is going to be a little TMI, a little HIPAA violation here. Meniere's disease has 3 symptoms: hearing loss, tinnitus, which is a ringing in this ear, and attacks of vertigo. And so a large group like this, or a cocktail reception or a party where everybody's moving and grooving and shucking and jiving, with tinnitus, it's very difficult to hear. So it's almost painful for me to go to these events. Whereas sitting at home alone in the dark, on Google Plus, with my 1.6 million followers, 600,000 more than Scoble, that's my element. I just feel at home there. It's the secret to my success. Yes.
Is this
Yeah.
on?
Yeah, just keep talking.
Okay. First of all, my apologies, Robert. You were right about highlight. I get it now. I'm using it.
That's Francine, by the way.
Here's the question for me. We keep urging the brands to get social, get social. What if the customers really don't want to engage that much with the brands? The only time a customer really wants to engage with a brand is probably when they have a problem.
I disagree.
That's one reason. The other reason is to tell everybody how damn cool this iPad is.
Oh,
Oh, it's just Apple. Apple's the only one.
No, it's
that's
not the only one. I go to a race and I see Red Bull and I tweet that out. Again, you create experiences in life that can be Instagrammed, can be tweeted, can be Foursquared, can be. We want to tell other people about things that are magical to us.
You could make the case that you should go to the engineering department or the R&D department and say to them, you need to give us a product that will generate conversation. And if your products suck, we can't put lipstick, we could put lipstick on a pig, but if you give us a pig, it's still a pig. And so, yes, Apple is an easy example, and it certainly doesn't foster social media because it doesn't participate in social media. But even something like, Ford, right? So I love Shelby Mustangs. I love Shelby Mustangs. So I post pictures of it. I posted a picture that had a picture of a Ford Mustang, and it said, warning, causes pregnancy, okay? And to put it mildly, I took a little heat for putting that up. But, that's, it's because a Shelby Mustang is so cool. So the test for product development is, are you creating something cool enough where people like Robert and I, who have no particular financial interest, no nothing.
You're paid by Samsung now.
Oh, yeah, but I'm not talking about Samsung. I'm talking about Ford right now.
Right.
So that's a very good test for, are you creating something cool enough that it generates social media conversation. If you're not, boo on you. I mean,
So guys, we've got time for these two gentlemen who've been very patient. And then we're
Okay,
gonna move
awesome.
on. Let's actually start with that gentleman there because
Okay.
he's been waiting longer.
Yeah.
Tell us who you are.
Hi, my name's Phil Hirsch, and I'm from Northern California. Hello, and thank you for a great talk. This is about entrepreneurs, and you were talking earlier about finding the window and all that. It's kind of like devil's advocate. I don't think entrepreneurs are creative in that way. I think entrepreneurs have the Steve Jobs, single-minded, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And the ones who happen to hit a window or something, and then everyone goes asks, Sergey and Larry, how'd you do it? They just happened to be at Stanford in 1992,
Right.
So to tell people find the greatest, best product is kind of like I'm being devil's advocate. I want to hear what you think. Entrepreneurs are kind of, what's that word? Idiot savants. They're dumbasses in some ways. It's like, this is what I want to build. This is what I want to build. And some of them succeed and the vast majority won't.
That's
So,
true.
your thoughts?
That's true, and we have a success bias. We talk about the ones that were successful,
Right.
because we want to attach our brands to the cool brands that have been there. The good entrepreneurs find something that works for 4 people. Steve Jobs and Wozniak told me they built a computer for 200 people, and they didn't want to build a company. He said, I kept trying to get my bosses at Atari and HP to build this thing for 200 people, and they wouldn't, because big companies don't understand how to serve 200 people or 4.
But I agree with you. I mean, to a large degree, entrepreneurship is the law of big numbers. And the more people out there trying stuff, the more likely you'll get a success. But then,
I think it's
the people
a
we
lot.
talk about are only the success.
I'd rather have a doubling. If I'm an entrepreneur, I'd rather have doubling, not
Doubling.
big numbers. Start with 4 people, and if it turns to 8,
No.
16,
I mean,
then
big numbers is there has to be lots of entrepreneurs to get one YouTube, one Facebook, one Cisco, one Apple. But you never hear about the 99.9% that fail. That's true. And in the venture capital business, you say, oh yeah, we funded Google. I knew Larry and Sergey were going to be a great team. They had a great algorithm. They had a great business model. And if you ask them, well, why'd you also fund Webvan and 19 other losers? You say, well, my partners did those. I told them not to. That's how venture capital works.
We got one more question. Tell us who you are.
My name is Roland Smart. I'm from a San Francisco-based company called Involver.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I'm pretty surprised that the conversation on stage today has not talked more about Open Graph, and particularly about custom verbs, custom actions. You mentioned that entrepreneurs step into open opportunities, right?
Yeah.
I see this as probably one of the biggest open opportunities out there.
Yep.
And I think it's particularly relevant for people in this audience because we've seen integrations for applications like Spotify, which are these sort of evergreen experiences.
Yep.
We haven't seen it much yet for campaign-based experiences, though I would point everybody to the recent USA Today ad meter as a really good example of how it was used for a campaign. I'm just curious to hear what you guys think, because for me, this is one of the biggest opportunities out there. I'm just surprised you haven't talked about it more.
I talked with the Washington Post, talked with Yahoo, talked with Food Spotting, our friends of mine. They're all seeing numbers that are going crazy because of this Open Graph. So I'm sure there's some people here don't know what Open Graph is.
I don't.
But it's an API. It's a way to talk to Facebook through these verbs. So when I go running with Runkeeper, it kicks off an event, a verb that says Robert Scoble ran 6.3 miles in
20 years.
20 years or whatever. Or Food Spotting, Francine ate sushi, liked sushi, nommed it, right? Nommed is one of their verbs. So every company has their own verbs for their own actions that their users are taking, and that shoves in. And you see those verbs on the ticker on the right side of Facebook if you use a standard old computer instead of an iPad. And you see these verbs roll down. So you see somebody listen to a song, to Skrillex on Spotify, somebody nom something on Food Spotting, somebody played a Zynga game. Those are the verbs that talk to the databases inside Facebook.
So just
Go ahead.
put that in terms of ads, right? I mean, if you're buying ads, think about it this way, and the USA Today example is a good one. You buy ads to drive people to the experience.
Yeah.
When
Right.
they're there, they do things like watch videos or rate them. That drives content into the ticker, and then drives more traffic to the experience. So
right.
if you think about, you drive 100 people there with ads, if you can get another 20 people for free to engage with that content, that's a tremendous value to an advertiser. So I think that's one of the biggest opportunities.
Absolutely think about that for the next few months, because I think Facebook's going to do an open graph style of advertising of its own. And let me set up why. So why does Mark Zuckerberg need to know everything about us? He needs to know our sexual preference, needs to know our politics. He needs to know whether we're male, female, how old we are. It's partly to serve this audience, right, to give demographics. But he's building a new media company, one where the media comes to you, and Google's trying to compete with this, right, with Google+. The media comes to you based on who you are. So if I know everything about you, Guy Kawasaki, and I know you're a hockey fan, I'll bring you some hockey content, right? And Facebook is collecting that data about who I am through the open graph. It isn't yet serving ads back out to these apps. Like food spotting doesn't get any value back yet. And I keep hearing rumors that Facebook's working on a new ad model, sort of like Google brought to the world, where they're going to shove ads back to the player, back to the Spotify, back to the food spotting. And when they do that, they are going to clean up, because Google has not opened up its API yet and has not built this identity system that Zuckerberg has. There's a reason this company's worth $100 billion, and it's certainly one that you guys are all going to be affected by in the next 18 months.
Well, I want to build on that for one moment, because tomorrow we have Paul Adams from Facebook, and we have Joe Turow from the Annenberg School at the University of Pennsylvania talking about some of these very issues. And Joe's book, The Daily You, really does dive into that, as does Eli Pariser's book, The Internet Bubble, or The Filter Bubble.
People who don't know who Paul Adams is, he wrote the paper at Google that became Google+. And then he moved to Facebook because he realized Facebook was way ahead in terms of social and understanding social. He uses an example, and he'll probably show it off tomorrow, of the Etsy gift store. Have you ever gone to Etsy and clicked, show me gifts, the potential gifts? It hooks up to Facebook, brings in your Facebook friends' likes, and suggests gifts to you. It's magical. That's the kind of social thinking that Facebook is doing, because they have this identity information, and they're gathering more every single day. And that's locking Google.
Powerful, yeah.
It's powerful, and it's locking Google. And Google doesn't have an answer to this yet. We expect to hear one in June at the Google I/O conference. Google's conference sold out in 2 minutes, by the way. So it's sold out a 10,000 person conference in 2 minutes, because our industry is interested in, is Google going to have an answer to this open graph?
Well, speaking of conferences, I do want to point out, Guy, you can get into ad tech for way less than $5,000. You can bring friends for that much money.
No, but
You said 5,000.
most people have to fly to conferences and stay in a hotel. It costs $5,000 about to go to a conference like this. So.
That pains me to hear, because it's just, it's much more economical than that. But you can go look to adtech.com and find out for yourself. Let's give these gentlemen a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. So, one piece of bad news, which is that Mr. Kawasaki is heading to Dallas, and there are hurricanes, and so he's actually tornadoes. It's going to be locusts and plagues by the time he gets to the airport. We're going to have him skip the book signing. However, he did stop by and pre-sign a great number of books for Enchantment, if you wish one. Thank you all so much for coming. Go to the conference. We have an expo break for an hour. Conference sessions start up again at 3:45, and don't forget to come to the concert and the pub crawl, pardon me.